Howdy.
What's going on, Tiago?
You hear me?
Yeah. Who's Chassidus tonight, Tiago?
Shmuley Albert making a wedding.
Oh, very nice. To who?
So these guys all went inside to eat, and I'm going to sit in the car in a restaurant. They went in a restaurant. I'm going to be in the car do the daf.
Which restaurant did they go into?
Nothing great, I promise you. Ain't no serious nefesh.
Where's the wedding?
Shiva Spring Valley.
Oh.
So, Uri, welcome. You caught up?
I see that yesterday's is only about a half an hour, so I can do that after this. So
Tonight's is also going to be relatively quick. Not easy, but relatively quick. What are we up to? Someone thought over base, right?
Yeah, bottom.
Yeah, okay, we ready? All right. So we have this Machlokes Rav Yochanan, right? We're dealing with the Machlokes of Rav and R Yochanan, which if one of the seirim dies, so you have to bring another set. Right, you can hear me well? Yeah? Louder?
Yes.
Okay, is that any better? Any better or still low?
A little better. But I have the oldest ears on the daf, so maybe.
Yeah, okay. And it's not any better now?
Yeah, that's better.
It's a little close to me. I don't know why it's not giving me. Okay. Anyway, so we have this Machlokes, Rav and R Yochanan. If you have again the seir, you have two seirim. One of them dies, so now they have to be matching. If you don't have both seirim when you're doing the avodah, so then it doesn't. Then the avodah is no good. So you have to bring another set of seirim and do a new girl. So now the problem is you have 3 goats, right? You have 3 goats. You have the 2 new goats, and you have one of the old goat, either the goat that was meant to be shechted or the goat that was meant to be thrown off the cliff. So the Machlokes Rav and R Yochanan is whether which does the original goat get brought or thrown off the cliff, or does the new one get or does the old one go out to die, and you just deal with the 2 new goats. So the Gemara is going back and forth. So now the Gemara is going to bring more kashas on Rav. So 4 lines up from the bottom at the end of the line. On again, Samach Dalet Amud. So Tanan. So we learned in the Mishnah, She'ein chatas tzibur mesa. Right, we know that a chatas tzibur is not allowed to. Chatas tzibur, you don't leave it to die. Hadi yachid ki agavna mesa. But if the chatas would belong to a yachid, right, then we would leave it to die. Now, what exactly is the case? So the case is, if you, like we discussed it once yesterday, that if an animal died, you separated animals as chatas and then you lost it, right? So now you're going to bring a new chatas, but then you found the original one. So what do you do? So that's all machlokes, which we're going to see over which one gets brought. Maybe you bring, do you bring the first one? Do you bring the second one? And what do you do with it, right? So we're saying in this case, a yachid, if the chatas belongs to a yachid, not the tzibur, then it would die. So Bishlam Rav Yochanan, so it's good according to Rav Yochanan, who says that in our Mishnah, when the extra goat is, you put it out to pasture, it's going on the original goat, the original set of goats, right? Whichever one's left from the original one. So then he could take it to Rav Abba Amar Rav. He can go with Rav Abba Amar Rav, right? Who says, Rav Abba Amar Rav says that the Omar Rav Abba Amar Rav, now on Talmud Aleph, Hakol Moedim Shim Nischaper B'She'ein Avuda. That again, the case is there's 2 sets of. There's a set of here. It's not a set. Somebody brings a chatos, loses it, and then brings another chatos. So that's a machlokes, which one you bring. But I call maidim shim nischaper b'she'ein avuda, that if you did the kapara with the one that was not lost, meaning the new one, then avuda mesa, then you let the avuda one die, which is meaning avuda mesa means you let it die. It doesn't mean you put it out to pasture. Letting it die means you don't feed it, right? Which is something that we didn't understand because what's with the tzar b'lechaim, but you just leave that one to die, not yira yistav, because yira yistav, which we're going to see, is putting it out to pasture so it could eat, and then you wait for it to get a mum. This is no, you lock it in a room and you don't feed it. So then that fits according to Rav Yochanan. But according to Rav, it's like separating two chatois for achrayas, which is a different case. That's a case where you just want to make sure. It's like somebody that has a shtickle OCD. So he wants to make sure that his korban chatas is going to be brought. So he separates two of them, right? And in case one gets messed up, so then he has the other one, right? Somebody who separates two chatois for achrayas, mischaper. He gets the kapara with one of them. Bashniya, tira, and the second one you put out to graze. So meaning everybody holds that you don't let the other one die, right? So therefore what? Yeah. So you don't. It doesn't have the same din as a lost chatas. So it's a kasha. It's a kasha on Rav. So Gemara answers no. Kiva Dama Rava. Since Rava said Rav Savar Lak Rav Yosi. Since we already said the Rav holds like Rabbi Yosi, Damar mitzvah berishan, that he always says it's a mitzvah to go with the first one. So meikara kemafresh liibadami. So when he separated it, the second chata, when he separated the new chatos, meaning the new set of goats, so then it's as if he's saying that the second one is you're never gonna be makriv because you're always gonna bring the first one. If you would, in the case where you would lose it, you're always going to bring the first one. But here in the case of Yom Kippur, right, he holds Rabbi Yosef holds it, the first one that you separated is the one that you're going to bring. So therefore, that's why Rav says you go with the first one. Even though really he should say that you should let it die, but no, because he'd rather go with the first one. Okay, fine. Right. There another raya. Tanan. The first part of tonight's stuff is hard. The second part, not easy, but it's easier than the first part. So Rabbi Yehuda Omer, Thomas, right? So what does Rabbi Yehuda say? That the second goat, you let it die. Yeah. So Bishlam Rabbi Yochanan Damar Sheni Shebezug Rishon Yira, that he says that the second goat, sorry, of the first pair, you put it out to pasture. So Rabbi Yehuda Yamos, right? So then Rabbi Yehuda says that it dies Mischav B'Sheni Shebezug Sheni, because then you're going to get a kapara with the second goat of the second pair. But according to Rav, who says that the second goat of the second goat from the second pair is what you put out the pasture. So Rabbi Yehuda Yamos, and Rabbi Yehuda is going to die. Rabbi Yehuda b'mayim chapas, and what's the kapara? Where are you getting the kapara? Right? Meaning you're letting the second one die, and the first one is also according to Rabbi Yehuda. Again, we said the Machlokes, Rabbi Yehuda holds that something that becomes puzzle stays puzzle forever. So how do you have that here? When the first goat's partner died, it became puzzle. It's puzzle forever. The second goat you can't bring. So what are you going to do? So Gemara says, "Mi savas Rabbi Yehuda sheni shebezug sheni kai." Who says Rabbi Yehuda is saying that when he says that the goat has to die, is going on the second goat of the second pair? Rabbi Yehuda sheni shebezug rishon kai. It's going. Rabbi Yehuda is going on the second of the first. The Gemara asked on froze.
Yeah, you froze.
Now
Going in and
You're
out.
good now. Now you're good.
okay, sorry. So on Samach Dalet Amud Beis, right? So we had asked the kasha from our Mishnah on Rav. So now we're going to ask the same kasha, a different version of the kasha, because this kasha can be on Rabbi Yochanan. Another thing Rabbi Yehuda says, Nishbach Adam, right? If the blood got spilled in the Beis Hamikdash before he got to sprinkle it onto the paroiches and into the Kodesh HaKodashim, Yomus Hamishtalech, then the one that's meant to be sent out, dies. Hamishtalech, right? If the one that's supposed to die, the one that's supposed to be sent off the cliff dies, Yishafech Adam, then you pour out the dam. So according to Rav, the Reisha's having a machlokes by a chatas tzibur, right? Whether you let a chatas tzibur that becomes possible, whether you let it die. The seifa pligi b'balei chayim, and the seifa is having a machlokes on what the din is if a bal chay becomes puzzle. Does it stay puzzle, or does it become back mutter once it gets a partner? Ella Rav Yochanan, my va'oid, but according to Rav Yochanan, right, what is the Mishnah saying? Va'oid. What other case is there? There's no other case. So the Gemara ends off kasha. That's taka kasha. Yeah, and which is what we said, because on Rav Yochanan we said our Mishnah yesterday. We said this. Our Mishnah is like Rav, not like Rav Yochanan. So yes, our Mishnah is a kasha on Rav Yochanan. Okay, fine. Now the Gemara changes gears a little bit and goes on to something else. I mean, it's a similar situation. Nishbach Adam Yamas Mishtaleh. So if the blood spills in the Beis Hamikdash, then you let the Seira Mishtaleh, the goat that's going to be sent out, you let it die. Right? So the Gemara says, Bishlam and Nishbach Adam Yamas Mishtaleh. So we understand if the blood gets spilled in the Beis Hamikdash, and then you're going to kill the one that's supposed to go over the cliff, Dakati lo yasav mitzvase. You still haven't done the mitzvah, right? Since you didn't sprinkle the blood, the mitzvah wasn't done yet. So since the mitzvah wasn't done yet, its partner goat also becomes plus. Ella mesa mishtaleach. But if the one that died was the one that's supposed to be sent off the cliff, why should its partner become puzzle? So the mitzvah is already done. What was the mitzvah? We said that the main mitzvah that gets done by the Sir Mishtalech is the gyral. What do? You just take the gyral and you put it down on its head. Then the mitzvah is done. So if the mitzvah is done, so then why should the other one spill the blood? So it says that it should be standing alive in front of Hashem to get a kapara. Until when do both animals need to be alive? Until the other one's blood gets put on the mizbeach, right? So what do you see from this? That if the Sira Mishtaleach dies, if the Sira Mishtaleach dies before the blood gets sprinkled, so then if both goats are not alive at the same time, so therefore you have to go get new goats. Yeah, fine.
Why does the Gemara here need a whole new limud? The one we learned last night, Yom Chai, that they both have to be chai together.
No, but it sounds like from here it needs to mamish. It has to be alive the entire time, not just by the gyral. No, from there you would say Yom Chai is just for the gyral. Could that be?
Maybe. Okay.
I'm not sure, but that's what I think. It has to mamish be. They both have to be alive the whole time, according to this. But maybe I don't know. Could be you're right that we learned it out from the other pasuk too. Yeah. Okay. So let's see. Now a shtickle do sugi. So Tanan Hassam. All right. So we learned over there. Bnei Ha'ir sheshalchu es shiklein. I hope the island remembers this from Shkolim a little bit. But if you have Bnei Ha'ir sheshalchu es shiklein, right? They sent their shkolim. Yeah, benignavu aishavdu. So again, the Olam sends their shkolim to Yerushalayim. So if they sent the shkolim benignavu aishavdu and they got stolen or got lost, and now it depends when it got lost, right? What did it get lost after the shkolim were already given into the Beis Hamikdash, or did it get lost before? So im nitruma truma. So if they already took the truma, meaning they already took from we had it yesterday, right? There was the Aleph Beis Gimel. There's 3 pushkas. So if the shkolim got stolen or lost before they started taking the money out of those pushkas to put them into the lishka, so then it's finally gizbaran. So then I'm sorry, did I say before? I meant after. If it's already, they started pulling the cash, the coins out to put into the lishka, so then you have to make a shvur to the gizbar. The shomer who lost it has to make the shvur to the treasurers, because the treasurers are the ones who were in charge of the coins. Vim lav, and if not, then they have to swear to the people from the city, because the people of the city are the one that lost it, because their shkalim never got there. And if they do swear to the Bnei Yair that they lost their shkalim, so then they go and they have to give new shkalim. Nimtzu, Ashech Zirim, right? Ashech Zirim Haganavim. If the shkalim were found, or the Ganavim gave it back, so then Elav Elu shkalim heim, then they both become shkalim, meaning now they have two sets of shkalim. They have their old set that they lost or got stolen, and they have their new set. So they're both shkalim. Ve'ein oilen land l'shana haba, and you can't use it for the next year, right? Meaning this. So what is a yid going to say, right? He gave a shekel, got stolen. Then they found it. So I'm saying he gave a shekel, got stolen. He donates a new one. Then they find the old one. So what's a chacham going to say? All right, keep my shekel for the next year, right? Isn't that what we would all say? I would think, right? So Rabbi Yehuda says you can't do that. I'm sorry. The Tanakama says you can't do that. Rabbi Yehuda Aimer, Oilen Land L'Shana Haba. Yeah, you can say, I'll take credit for the next year. My time at Rabbi Yehuda. Why does Rabbi Yehuda say that you could take credit for the next year? Amar Rava, Kasav Rabbi Yehuda, Chayva Shel Shana Zu, Kreivas L'Shana Haba. A chayv that I have to bring in this year, I'm allowed to bring it for the next year. Right? Meaning I could give it this year, can be brought in the next year.
You only get 1 year credit, right? I'm saying, like, let's say next year you
If you had
gave
shekel
because you didn't
insurance.
realize it.
Shmuel David, if you had shekel insurance and you got a third shekel.
Yeah, it's it. That's what it's saying. Although I don't know how this works with Baal Ta'achar, because there's an Isser. If you're supposed to bring a carbon, you can't go more than 3 Yomim Tovim.
Well, that's a machlokes like also, no?
Yeah, sure. You know what's a common question? A couple people asked it to me today, Agav. I didn't even realize that it has to do with the daf. Can you advance? Can you give money from, let's say you already gave all your meiser. Can you give more money now based on future income? Right? Meaning I'm giving for next year's money. Halavitis should be right that we gave enough meiser that we ran out of meiser for this year. Can I give this year for next year? Right? So I don't know if you can learn out from here that chayvus of this year you can bring in the next year. I don't know if it's exactly a tzushtal or not, but either way, that's what Rabbi Yehuda holds. Right? So that sheet of Rabbi Yehuda, now the Gemara for the next Amud is going to ask kashas on the sheet of Rabbi Yehuda. Again, Rabbi Yehuda holds that a chayv for this year can be brought next year. So Eisvei Abaya asked the kasha, yeah, par v'seir sheyom kippurim shavdu. If you have the par and the seir, meaning they both got lost. Yeah, the hifrish acherim tachtein, and then they separated new ones. The chen seirei avodah zara shavdu, and then seirei avodah zara. Right, if the Sanhedrin made an incorrect psak, and everybody in Klal Yisrael did avodah zara, so then they have to bring special goats for this. So either though the seirei avodah zara got lost, or the par and the seir of Yom Kippur. So kulan yamusu, they all have to die. Yeah, divrei Rabbi Yehuda, that's a big. He says everything. All the animals die, the originals and the replacements. Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, Yiruachi Yistavu. You put it out to pasture until they get a mum, and then you sell them, and then you take that money and you buy a nadav. And then obviously you have to separate new karbanos. Shein chatas tzibur mesa. Why? Because he holds that a chatas tzibur, you never let it die. You have to put it out to pasture. Rabbi Yehuda hold, you let it die. And the Rabbi Elazar Shimon say you can't do that with chatas tzibur. Yeah, what are you saying?
I know it's not the sugya, but what is the case where the Bezdin said this thing is not a avodah zara and they worshipped it? What is the case? What happened?
Yeah, you know what I'm going to say. You know what I'm going to say now. They said that the sheitlach are avodah zara, or they said the sheitlach are not avodah zara. Noilam decided that they are avodah zara. No, I don't know what other case it would be.
I mean, we have to make a nightly reverence to the sheitel, so why not?
Yes. But this is the different issue. This is the old issue. This is the old sheitel issue. This is not the new sheitel issue, right? But anyway, so what's the Gemara's kasha? Yeah, why can't, so according to Rabbi Yehuda, why do you have to put it out to pasture? Save them for next year, right? Again, Rabbi Yehuda said that the new shkalim you could save for next year, right? So why can't you do the same thing here? Save these animals for next year, Yom Kippur, right? You separated a goats and you separated the bull, right? And then they got lost and then you found the new ones. Good, so leave it for next year, right? That's important to understand for the next Amud. Basically, why can't?
Don't be too
Oh,
old.
very good, very good. So that the Gemara is going to bring that one of the options. But that's what the Gemara is thinking now. Why can't you leave them for another year? So the Gemara answers,
Isn't that assuming that they're also going to be over the Avodah Zarah in the next year too? Or for any chatas?
I don't think the kasha is from the Avodah Zarah. It's very good. Let's hope, right?
I'm saying, like you're saying, oh, they'll be over the Avodah Zarah next year too. Let's leave it.
No, for Yom Kippur. It's for Yom Kippur.
Right. L'chara, you're right. The kasha is on the Yom Kippur one, not on the Avodah Zarah. You hope, right? That's a good point. Yeah. So Amar Lei on Talmud Beis, Kabbanas Tzibur Kamers. You're talking about Kabbanas Tzibur, Shani Kabbanas Tzibur. You can't do this with Kabbanas Tzibur to leave it the next year because Kabbanas Tzibur are different. Because Rav Tavi Amar Rav Yoshia. It's like Rav Tavi, the name of Rav Yoshia. The Amar Rav Tavi Amar Rav Yoshia. Amar Kra Zais Eilas Chaydesh B'Chodshai. Right. This is the Eilah of the. This is Rish Chaydesh lady. This is the Eilas of Rish Chaydesh in its month. Amra Torah. The Torah says Chadesh v'Havi li Karban Mitruma Chadasha. You have to bring new karbanas from the new truma. You cannot bring karbanas from last year's money. You got to always use fresh money from this year. So therefore, even though Rabbi Yehuda normally holds you could push off the carbon till next year, right? But by say you could push off any hektish to next year. But by karbanas, there's a pasuk that tells you not that you can't do that. So God says, okay, hatina seir, that tells you the goats. Par ma'ikal but what about the par? Because why? If the Olam remembers, who buys the par? The par is bought from the Kohen Gadol's private money. It's not a carbon tzibur. Even though we had a whole Gemara, maybe it's still called a carbon tzibur, right? Even though he's buying it, but the bottom line is that it's not. The par is bought with the Kohen Gadol's own money, so you should save it for next year. So the Gemara says, gezeira par, how to seir. We're making gezeira from a par because of the seir. So the Gemara says, and because of a gezeira, because you're afraid that your par is going to get mixed up with the seir, you're going to make an animal die, right? And on another kasha, this that we said that Rav Tavi in the name of Yoshi, that carbon tzibur does not you cannot push it to the next year. That's only for a mitzvah. The carbon tzibur that gets brought on the first day of Nisan, mitzvah lahavi menach chadash. It's a mitzvah to bring it from the new money. But if you do bring it from the old money, from the previous year's money, yatsa, then you're going to be yatsa. Mitzvah, you're missing out on mitzvah. So even Rav Tavi is holds that you are with less carbon. So is that enough to make this animal have to die? So Elam Rav Zera says a different shot. The reason why you keep the carbon seir, the carbon and the seir in the par for next Yom Kippur is l'shein ha-goyrol kaveh mishana l'chaveta. The goyrol doesn't work from 1 year. You already made a goyrol. That goyrol was for this year. The goyrol's not for next year. So you'd have to do the goyrol again. So the Gemara says, okay, if it nasi v'nagro, so why don't you just make another goyrol next year? Make a new goyrol next year. So the Gemara answers, gezeira shema yomer ha-goyrol kaveh mishana l'chaveta. No, because then they might say that you can use the goyrol from 1 year to the next year. Right? And meaning you need to make a new goyrol. They're going to think it's the previous year's goyrol, which I don't understand what's wrong. So let's say it's the previous year's goyrol. I don't know. That's what you're going to ask, Gershon?
No, the whole reason the Gemara asked make a new goyrol was to get around that.
Correct.
And then the answer is it's a gezeira. Shema will say that. How does that work?
No. What are you saying?
The Gemara asked. The Gemara originally said you can't do it because the goyrol doesn't work mishana l'chaverta, right? So the Gemara asked, so we should make a new goyrol. Then we'll because it doesn't work,
right?
And for the Gemara gezeira, Shama will say it will. The whole reason we said make a new one is because it doesn't work.
No, but the Olam is going to think that this gyro that you did this year was the gyro from last. Meaning they're not going to realize that you did a new gyro. That's all. The Olam's going to not know you did a new gyro.
They're going to think the whole Maimad with the Kohen Gadol and the Skan and everything, it's all fake.
No, I don't know if they'll be able to see it.
Wasn't that the whole point? Stand in front of the whole Klal Yisrael and show them this is Hashem and this is whatever?
Hold on.
No, you have full service. That's him.
Like we do marriage schools yeshiva, or you can do later, whatever you want.
Anyways,
To you.
am I frozen or am I good?
You're good.
Yaakov, tell Mordechai you should be quiet. You daven Meir back in Boston. Just hold it together.
I'm
That's
doing
right.
whatever the Rav wants to do. I'm a shubit to the Rav.
Anyway,
Finally,
okay, anyway,
finally.
So yeah, for Myriv, he's Meshubit to me.
Besides,
That's all
where
right.
it comes
It's
to
an easy
eating in Chimchuri, I'm not meshubit.
From Sri Yaakov, you remind your brother he owes me a phone call at some point.
Don't get liners started,
Tell Rav
please.
Aaron I'm working on this.
Mordechai, don't get liners started, please.
Anyways, so gezeira Shem Yom Agaro Kaveh Mishana, people are not going to realize it, and they're going to think that the girl's Kaveh from one year to the other year. So Gemara says Hatina Seir. That's all good for the Seir. Par, Ma'ikal Amemar. What are you going to say about a par? There's no gyro by the par. So why do you have to make the par? Why can't you use the par for next year? So Gemara says gezeira par otu seir. So make a gezeira of the par otu seir. So Gemara says Mushum gezeira yamusa, because of the gezeira they're going to die. Why are you going to let the animal die for a gezeira? So now we have third shot in why Reb Yehuda holds that you can't leave the animal for later. So it's a gezeira because the chatas, it might be similar to a chatas that's owner dies, right? What happens if the Kohen Gadol dies during the year, right? So now you're not allowed to use this carbon chatas. You can't use this par. So memela, you can't do it. So the Gemara says hatinach par. So now the other way, so that's only for the par. Seir ma'ikil meimar. What about the seir? There's nothing wrong. Who's going to die for the seir? It's not the Kohen. It's a gezeira seir or two pars. And one says no, it's a gezeira of the seir or two par. So one says a mushum gezeira yamusu. Again, the same kasha. For a gezeira, it's going to die. So now fourth teretz. El gezeira mushum chatas sha'avra shnasa rabaran. Like you said, it's a gezeira because the chatas we're afraid that it's going to be over a year old. We know that once it's a year old, the carbon doesn't work. Gemara says gezeira, that's a gezeira. He gufa. I'm sorry, gezeira. It's a gezeira. He gufa chatas sha'avra shnasa. It's going to be over a year old. I mean, if it's more than 1 day old on this Yom Kippur, so then next Yom Kippur it's going to be more than a day. It's going to be more than a year old. So Gemara says, "Halei kasha." That's not a kasha. That's Karevi. We go like Rebbe, the Tanya. So now we just need a little bit of akdama for this. The halacha is that in a walled city, if you sell a building in a walled city, you have a 1 year rebate. Right? You have a 1 year rebate that the guy can back out. Right? Only in walled cities. Shaila is, what do you call a year? So Shana Tamima, a full year from the sale, minus Shloish Meis V'Shishim V'Chamisha Yom. You count it to 365 days. You're using the solar calendar. Kamini Nemaisa Chama, like the days of the sun. Divrei Rebbe, that's a Rebbe. No, you go 12 months from day to day. Right? Meaning, so it's a Machlokes whether you're using the solar calendar or the lunar calendar. Now on Talmud Aleph. And if they make it into an ibrio, so now what happens if they make it into ibrio? So now who gets it? Is that can he backtrack on an ibrio or not? So that's what we're saying here. So we're gonna go like Rebbe holds that if it becomes a leap year, then it's gonna be less than a year old. It'll still be less than a year old, which is quite an interesting din. Right, because then we're basically saying that extra month of life really does not make it into its second year. So Gemara says, okay, Hatina Seir. That all helps with Seir. Par ma'ikal meimar. Right, what about a par? Right, the par doesn't have the 1 year. The par doesn't have the 1 year restriction. A par, right, is 3 years old. So Gemara says, gezeira par otu seir. it's a gezeira of the par or to seir. Right? Umashum says Umashum gezeira yomus, again the same kasha. Because of a gezeira of a par, maybe because of a seir, we're going to make this we're going to let this animal die. Void chatos she'over shnasa, the ria azru, and a chatos that was over a year old doesn't die. You put it out to pasture. Damarish lakish chatos she'over shnasa, a chatos that it's a year passes. Royan oisa ki'ilu hi amedus bebeisa kvaris v'roya. We look at it like it's in a beisa kvaris, and you put it out to pasture. Right. So therefore, it can't be that this is talking about what do you call it? A chat the shavar shnada, because that you wouldn't let it die. You would let it put it out to pasture. Elo amarava. So now a fifth shot. Gezeira mishum takala. We're just afraid that if you're going to leave these animals to the next year on Yom Kippur, somebody's going to end up using these animals, and it's going to be over on Meila. So therefore, we can't leave them for another year. Okay, so that's going to be the maskanas Gemara, but the Gemara is going to continue tomorrow. But we'll stop over here. All right. So again, there's 5 different. The Gemara, Rabbi Yehuda says that really he holds that you could save shkalim from one year to the next, except by so why can't you save the karbanas of the seir and the para for the next year? So the Gemara attempts 4 different terutzim, which the Gemara slugs up, because why the Gemara says why should you let it die for that reason? So then he says no, it's a takala. The reason why he doesn't let it go for the next year Yom Kippur is because we're afraid you leave these 2 animals, somebody's going to end up using the animals. All right, have a good night. I hope it was clear enough, and I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank
Your
you.
patience.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Sag gesund. Bye-bye. This place don't have Hawaiian punch, right?
Or your fruit punch.
All right.
They might have.
Naftali, oh, you're by the
Thank you.
graduation, Naftali. I'm wondering.
Yeah,
where
I
you
came into
were.
base matter. I came
Hopefully you
into
wanna
the
go
base
in.
matter. Yes.
Very
That wine
nice.
punch, I'll go
Very
check.
nice. No, it's gotta be from
So
the
Yaakov,
yeah.
Baruch Hashem, the graduation
this-
finished. Yeah.
this last Amud really essentially answers R and R, which is kasha. Why the what's it called? Tzar b'alei chayim. How can you be yomus? How can you make the animal die? You see, the Gemara really doesn't want to. Even with a gezeira, we're not going to allow to do that to yomus. His whole question, the tzar b'alei chayim. How can you make an animal die?
I'm just gonna go say. Oh, sorry. Oh.
Yeah, I 100%.
This is the answer to that. When it's mitzvosei bekach, that's not tzar b'alei chayim.
I hear. I thought you were gonna say, and also you see how stark the Gemara asks.
Yeah, even a gezeira, we're not going to allow it. A gezeira is not going to make it. That's tzar b'alei chayim still. There's only one case you're going to allow it, when that's the mitzvah. That's what you have to do.
Yeah. I hear. Yeah, Yanachanami.
Yeah. All right, Shikayach.
All right. Fine. Zag is
Oh, is anyone else on right now?
Somebody just popped on. Dr. Corman, I don't know if he's trying to.
No, I just wanted to ask. I probably shouldn't ask while it's being recorded anyway.
That was probably a good idea.
I'm going to text you. Okay, someone asked me something today that I need to know. Yeah.
All right.
All right, Shikayach. Galtov.
Okay, bye-bye. Doctor, can you hear me?
Yes,
We just finished. It was a very short daf. Sorry.
no problem. I'll listen to the replay.
All right. How are you
Doing
doing?
work. Okay, Baruch Hashem.
You never got back to me. You wanted to ask me something.
Not
last week or
important. I
something.
wanted to ask if you knew somebody, but I found out already.
All right. Okay, I apologize.
Thank you. No problem.
Shmuley's there, by the way.
Oh, he is. I'll go see him.
Yeah, he's going to be there till I think Shabbos. Till
Okay,
after Shabbos.
I'll go check.
All right,
with
I
him.
appreciate it.
No problem. Okay.
All right, have a good night.
Be well.
Good night.